I was sitting alone in a café when a strange woman approached my table. Without a word, she placed a gray metal box in front of me and said, "Guard this with your life tonight. Open it at midnight, not a second before." Before I could ask anything, she vanished into the November darkness. I slipped the box into my jacket and drove home, my hands trembling on the wheel. When I finally opened it at midnight, what I found inside made my knees buckle and my world shatter. Welcome to my story. Wondering what was in the box? Like and subscribe to see how this unfolds. Comment where you're watching from. Quick note, some elements are dramatized for storytelling. If it's not your style, feel free to check out other videos. Now let me tell you what I found at midnight. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but I kept the mug between my palms anyway. Harbor Lights Café wasn't much, just a weathered clapboard building perched on the edge of Kennebunk's main street. The kind of place where locals knew your order before you opened your mouth. Tonight, though, I was grateful for its anonymity. The November wind rattled the windows, and inside the warm glow of Edison bulbs cast soft shadows across the scuffed wooden tables. I'd been coming here more often lately. A year now since Dorothy passed, and the farmhouse still felt too big, too quiet. 42 acres of land that had been in her family for 3 generations, and I couldn't walk through the kitchen without seeing her at the stove, humming something off-key while she stirred her famous chowder. The waitress, Linda, her name tag read, refilled my cup without asking. "You okay tonight, Mr. Hayes?" I nodded. "Fine, thanks." She didn't believe me. Small-town folks never did, but she had the grace to let it slide. I was staring out the window, watching the occasional car crawl past on Route 1 when the woman appeared. She didn't walk in like a normal customer. No hesitation at the door, no scanning for an empty seat. She moved with purpose, her dark coat buttoned to the collar, a gray scarf wrapped tight against the cold. Mid-40s, maybe. Sharp eyes that took in everything, the exits, the other patrons, me. She crossed the cafe in 6 strides and set something on my table. A metal box. Gray fireproof by the look of it, about the size of a hardcover novel. The kind you'd use to store important documents or secrets. "Guard this with your life tonight," she said. Her voice was low, steady. Not a request, a command. I looked up at her. My military instincts kicking in, assess the threat, identify the intention. But her face gave nothing away. "Who are—" She placed an envelope beside the box, plain white, sealed. "Open it at midnight, not a second before." "Look, I don't know what this is about." "Your wife knew." She leaned in slightly, and I caught the faint scent of rain on her coat. Dorothy knew, and now you need to know. My chest tightened. "What did you just say?" But she was already moving, weaving between tables toward the back exit. I started to stand to follow, but something in the way she'd said Dorothy's name with weight, with familiarity, rooted me to the spot. By the time I reached the back door, she was gone, vanished into the November night like smoke. I stood there for a moment, the cold air biting at my face, scanning the empty parking lot. Nothing. No car pulling away. No footsteps, just the distant crash of waves against the rocks down by the shore. Back inside, Linda was wiping down the counter. "Friend of yours?" "Never seen her before." She frowned. "Funny. She looked like she knew you." I returned to my table. The box sat there dull and unassuming. I picked it up, heavier than I expected, solid. The metal was cold enough to burn. I turned it over. No markings, no labels, just a small keyhole on the front. The envelope felt thicker than it should. I tore it open. Inside, a small brass key and a folded note. The handwriting was hurried, almost frantic. "Midnight. Not a second before. Trust no one." V. My pulse quickened. V. Who the hell was V? I glanced at the clock on the wall. 9:47 p.m., 2 hours and 13 minutes. The drive home felt longer than usual. Route 9 stretched dark and empty, the headlights of my old Ford pickup cutting through the fog rolling in from the coast. I kept the lockbox on the passenger seat, stealing glances at it every few seconds, like it might suddenly open on its own. Dorothy. That woman had said Dorothy's name. For a year I'd been stuck in this strange limbo, everyone in town tiptoeing around me, offering casseroles and condolences, telling me time would heal. But time hadn't done a damn thing except make the silence louder. And now this. I turned off the main road onto the gravel lane that led to the farm. The headlights swept across the old red barn, the fence Dorothy had painted white 2 summers ago. The vegetable garden now gone to seed. The house loomed ahead, its windows dark. I parked and sat there for a minute, engine ticking as it cooled. The wind pushed through the trees, making them groan and sway. November in Maine. Everything dying back, getting ready for winter's grip. Inside, I flipped on the kitchen light and set the box on the table. The old oak surface scarred and worn from decades of family meals. Dorothy used to sit right there every morning reading the Portland Press Herald, with her coffee occasionally laughing at the police blotter. "Listen to this one, Russell," she'd say. "Someone called 911 because their neighbor's cat was staring at them." Staring. I shook my head, pushing the memory away. 10:45 p.m. I made a fresh pot of coffee, paced the kitchen, checked the clock, paced some more. Military training had taught me patience, but this was different. This wasn't waiting for orders or watching for movement in the dark. This was something else, something that had Dorothy's name attached to it. At 11:30, I sat down, pulled the box closer, ran my thumb over the keyhole. The note had said midnight. Why midnight? What difference did 15 minutes make? But something in my gut told me to wait, to follow the instructions. Dorothy always said I was too stubborn for my own good, but she also said my instincts had kept me alive overseas. "Trust your gut, Russell," she'd say. "It's smarter than you think." 11:55 p.m. I slid the key into the lock. 5 minutes. 300 seconds. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the wind outside. My heart hammered against my ribs, stupid, really getting worked up over a box. But my hands were steady. Old habits. Midnight. I turned the key. The lock clicked and the lid lifted with a soft creak. Inside, nestled in a bed of foam padding, was a cell phone. Not just any phone. Dorothy's phone. I'd recognize that cracked screen protector anywhere she'd dropped it in the barn last fall and refused to get it fixed. "Still works," she'd insisted. But the police had said they never found her phone after the accident. Said it must have been lost in the woods where she fell. I lifted it carefully. The screen was dark. I pressed the power button. Nothing. Battery drained. Of course. I was reaching for my charger when the phone vibrated in my palm. My breath caught. The screen lit up pale blue, almost ghostly. A single notification. "Incoming call, unknown caller, 12:15 a.m. The phone rang once. Twice. My hand trembled as my thumb hovered over the green button. I'd lost Dorothy a year ago. Her phone had been missing. And now it was ringing in my kitchen at midnight. I pressed answer and raised it to my ear. Static crackled through the line. Then a voice mechanically distorted, impossible to identify. "Russell Hayes, your life is in danger." I gripped the table. "Who is this?" "Listen carefully. Don't trust your daughter. Don't trust her husband. Don't trust the police." Each word came sharp, deliberate. "Your wife discovered something. Check her office. withdrawal records, large cash amounts. What does Allison have to do with "the line went dead"? I stood there, Dorothy's phone against my ear, listening to silence. The kitchen clock read 12:30 a.m. My pulse hammered. Don't trust your daughter. Allison, my only child. 38, now married 6 years to Dominic Cruz, a financial advisor with a corner office in Portland. She'd called me every week since I lost Dorothy, checking in, offering help. My daughter. But that voice knew something. Sleep didn't come. By dawn, I was on my third pot of coffee. At 8 a.m., gravel crunched outside. I looked through the window, Allison's silver Lexus. She never showed up unannounced. I opened the door before she knocked. "Dad." She smiled, but something was off. "I hope it's not too early. I was heading to Portsmouth and thought I'd stop by." "Coffee. Please." She set her designer purse on the table right where Dorothy's phone had rung hours ago. "You look tired." "I'm fine." I poured her a cup. "What's this about?" She pulled out a folder, thick, official. "Dad, you're 67. 42 acres is a lot to manage alone. The barn needs repairs. The fences are falling apart. I'm managing." "Are you?" She slid the folder across. Pinnacle Holdings made an offer. $3.9 million. The number landed like a stone. "You could buy a condo in town," she continued, words rushing now. "Be closer to people. To me, Dad, you could move on." Move on, as if Dorothy was just something to get past. I opened the folder. Glossy brochures, legal documents. Real offer, real company. "How long have you known about this?" "Dominic heard about it months ago. He thought of you immediately." "Dominic." I set the folder down. "I'm not interested." Her jaw tightened. "Don't be stubborn. This land is worth more to them than it is to you. This was your mother's family land. 3 generations. And Mom's gone." The words came sharp. She softened. "She'd want you to be practical." I studied my daughter, the tension in her shoulders, the tremor in her voice when she said 3.9 million. "Don't trust your daughter." "I'll think about it." Relief flooded her face. "That's all I'm asking." She checked her expensive gold watch. "I should go." At the door, she turned. "You can't hold on to the past forever. Sometimes letting go is right." I watched her Lexus disappear down the road. 3.9 million. For a farm, nobody should want this badly. Dorothy's office still smelled like lavender sachets she'd kept in the desk drawers. I sat at her roll-top desk, hands shaking, and opened her laptop. Password Russell 1956. My name and birth year. The email loaded. 3 months before she passed Pinnacle Holdings. "We're prepared to increase our offer to $3.9 million. I scrolled back. Earlier emails. $3.2 million. Then $3.5 million. They'd pursued her for 6 months. Escalating. Dorothy never mentioned it. I opened the filing cabinet. 2023 financial records. Bank statements. Then cash withdrawals. July, $8,500. First National Bank, Portland. August. $13,600. Main Savings, Kennebunk. September. $20,400. Coastal Credit Union, Biddeford. Total $42,500. Dorothy was meticulous about money. She didn't withdraw $42,000 without a reason. Wedged between files, a small spiral notebook. Her handwriting hurried. August 15th, saw truck again, late. No headlights. Why August 22nd? Dominic asking about property. Pushy. September 3rd. Voices near old well. 2 a.m. they ran. September 10th. Why do they want my farm? The last entry, November 10th. 5 days before I lost her. Something's wrong. I need help. Who can I trust? I stared at the words until they blurred, pounding on the door. Through the window, unmarked sedan, government plates. I shoved the notebook into my jacket and answered. A man, early 50s badge clipped to his belt. Maine State Police jacket. Mr. Hayes, Detective Vincent Morales. We need to talk. Don't trust the police. I stepped aside. Come in. He moved into the kitchen with cop confidence, assessing everything. He sat in Dorothy's chair. I'm reopening the investigation into what happened to your wife. The room tilted. Reopening. New evidence suggests it may not have been accidental. I gripped the counter. What evidence? I can't discuss an active investigation. His voice was smooth, practiced. But I need to ask, had your wife mentioned feeling threatened? Anyone concerning her, who can I trust? No, I said. Nothing. His eyes narrowed. You're sure no unusual behavior? You people told me she fell. That's what happened. That's what the initial report concluded. He stood, handed me a card. But sometimes reports miss things. At the door, he paused. Be careful, Mr. Hayes. There are things about what happened to your wife we didn't tell you. His hand on the knob. And someone doesn't want you knowing the truth. The door closed. His sedan pulled away. I stood alone in the kitchen where Dorothy used to hum, where Allison had eaten 1,000 breakfasts, where a stranger's phone had rung at midnight. I pulled out Dorothy's notebook. Read the last line. Who can I trust? I didn't know anymore. I gestured toward the kitchen table. Have a seat, detective? Morales pulled out Dorothy's chair, the one with the carved armrest she'd traced every morning while reading the paper. He sat with casual authority, but his eyes never stopped moving. The coffee pot, the unopened mail, the framed photo of Dorothy and me. Cop eyes. Always cataloging. I poured myself another cup, keeping my hands steady despite the notebook burning in my jacket pocket. What can I help you with? When was the last time you had visitors? Anyone besides family? My daughter was here this morning. I leaned against the counter. She stops by occasionally. Anyone else? I thought of the woman at the café, the gray lockbox, Dorothy's phone ringing at midnight. No one. His pen scratched across paper. And before your wife's accident, did she mention anyone showing unusual interest in the property? Why do they want my farm? No. Morales looked up. You're certain no real estate inquiries? We get calls like that. Dorothy handled them. I sipped coffee. She never mentioned anything unusual. A lie. But what could I say? Yes, I just discovered my wife was harassed for months, withdrew $42,500 in cash, and wrote that something was wrong. All things I knew nothing about. What about finances? Any unusual transactions? My pulse kicked up. We live simply. Farm income, my pension. Nothing fancy. And your son-in-law, Dominic Cruz. He helps out financially. Dominic's done well. Financial advising. But we don't need help. Morales closed his notepad. Mr. Hayes, I'll be straight. There are people interested in this property. Interested enough to concern me. Pinnacle Holdings made an offer through my daughter this morning. I turned them down. His eyebrows lifted. Yeah, when? This morning. Something flickered across his face. That's admirable, but it might also be dangerous. The word hung between us. What are you saying? There are easier ways to acquire property than making offers. He handed me a card with a handwritten number. Anything unusual happens, call me directly. Day or night? At the door, he paused. The night your wife had her accident mid-November, anything strange, vehicles, sounds. November 15th. The worst night of my life. I was at a supplier meeting in Portsmouth until 9. When I got home, Dorothy wasn't there. I found her near the old well around midnight. The old well. That's quite far from the house. She liked walking the property at night, said it helped her think. In November, in the dark. I met his eyes. My wife wasn't afraid of the dark. He held my gaze, then nodded. No, I don't suppose she was. After his sedan disappeared, I stood at the window. Something felt wrong. The questions were too specific. Don't trust the police. I pulled out Dorothy's phone. 15% battery, impossible after a year. Unless someone had been maintaining it. I opened the Notes app. Shopping lists, farm reminders, recipes. Dorothy's life in fragments. Then at the bottom, a note dated mid-November, the day before I lost her. The truth is buried where the roses bloom. If I don't come back, Russell, dig deep. My hands shook. The roses. Dorothy's memorial garden. We'd planted it 15 years ago after her mother passed away. 24 peace roses with yellow and pink petals. She'd hidden something there. The phone buzzed. They're watching. Be careful tonight. V. The November sun was sinking. In a few hours, I'd be digging in Dorothy's rose garden. I opened the mudroom closet. Army flashlight. Collapsible shovel. Work gloves. Jacket. The phone buzzed again. A photo this time. Grainy, distant. My farmhouse. My driveway. My truck. Taken today. Someone was watching. Right now. I moved from the window, pulse hammering. Checked the locks. Scanned the tree line. Nothing. But that didn't mean they weren't there. Military training kicked in, situational awareness, defensive positioning. I was 67, but some instincts never fade. The afternoon crawled. I forced down cold chicken and stale bread. Checked the phone constantly. No new messages. At 5 p.m., tires on gravel. I moved to the front window, staying back from the glass. A black Mercedes. Spotless, expensive. It stopped in my driveway like it owned the place. The driver's door opened. Dominic Cruz stepped out. 40 years old, 6 feet tall, lean from expensive gyms. Charcoal suit that cost more than my pension. White shirt, no tie. Perfectly styled hair. Gleaming shoes. And his eyes, cold, calculating, swept the property like he was appraising it. He'd never shown up unannounced. Not once in 6 years. I watched him close the door. Smooth his jacket. Start toward the house with confident, purposeful strides. Then he glanced over his shoulder. Not casually, deliberately. Checking if anyone followed. And I saw it 50 yards back on the county road, half hidden in the trees. Another vehicle. Dark SUV, tinted windows. Dominic never came alone unless there was trouble. And this time he'd brought backup. I opened the door before Dominic could knock. Better to meet him on my terms. Russell. He extended his hand, his smile perfectly calibrated, warm enough to seem friendly, but it never reached his eyes. Those stayed cold. Assessing. I didn't take his hand. Dominic, this is unexpected. I was in the area. Thought I'd check on you. He glanced past me into the kitchen. May I come in? I stepped aside. He moved through my house like he'd already mapped it. his expensive shoes clicking on the hardwood Dorothy had refinished herself 20 years ago. He set a leather briefcase on the kitchen table. Allison mentioned you're thinking about the Pinnacle offer. I said I'd think about it. Good. That's smart. He unzipped the briefcase, pulled out a tablet and several printed spreadsheets. I took the liberty of running some numbers. As your financial advisor, you're Allison's financial advisor, not mine. His smile tightened. Fair enough. As someone who cares about this family, then. He slid a spreadsheet across the table. Property taxes, $18,000 a year, insurance, maintenance, utilities. Your monthly expenses are running around $4,000. I'm aware of my expenses. And your income. He tapped the tablet. Farm revenue is down 30% from 5 years ago. Your pension covers basics, but there's no cushion. One bad harvest, one major repair, the furnace, the roof, the well pump, and you're looking at serious debt. I crossed my arms. I've managed this farm for 40 years. You and Dorothy managed it. His voice was gentle, but the words cut. Now it's just you. 67 years old. How much longer can you maintain 42 acres alone? Long enough. He stood, moved to the window overlooking the back acreage. This property has potential, Russell. Real potential. Pinnacle isn't the only interested party. There are developers, investors, people who understand what this land could be worth in the right hands. And what hands would those be? He turned backlit by the dying afternoon sun. People willing to pay. People willing to go to considerable lengths to secure valuable assets. The phrasing was careful, professional, but the implication landed like a threat. Is that why you're really here, Dominic? To tell me I should be afraid? I'm here because I care about Allison, and by extension, you. He collected his papers, slid them back into the briefcase with practiced efficiency. The offer on the table is generous, more than generous, but these opportunities don't last forever. Markets shift, interest wanes. It would be unfortunate if you waited too long and found yourself with fewer options. He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the knob. One more thing. That detective who visited today, Morales. Be careful what you tell him. Not everyone in law enforcement has your best interests at heart. And then he was gone, his Mercedes pulling away in a spray of gravel. I stood in my kitchen, fury and fear warring in my chest. The spreadsheets were still on the table. I swept them into the trash. Dominic Cruz had just threatened me in my own home. Subtle, deniable, but a threat nonetheless. The question was, what did he think I knew, and how far would he go to keep it secret? The sun set. I paced, made coffee, checked the locks 3 times. At 9 p.m. the phone buzzed. Meet me at your barn. Midnight. Come alone. I have answers. The answers. Finally. I looked out at the darkness beyond my windows. The barn was 100 yards from the house, isolated, surrounded by open ground. If this was a trap, I'd see it coming. And if it wasn't, if V really had answers about what Dorothy discovered, about why she withdrew all that cash, about what was buried in the rose garden, then I had to go. I dressed for the cold. Heavy jacket, boots, gloves, clipped the army flashlight to my belt, pulled my old Ka bar knife from the drawer where it had sat unused for 30 years. The leather sheath was cracked, but the blade was still sharp. Before I left, I wrote a note on the back of a feed store receipt. Dennis, if something happens, check the lockbox in my truck. R. I tucked it under the coffee pot where he'd find it in the morning. 11:30 p.m. I grabbed the flashlight and headed out. The November cold hit like a fist. Clear sky, half-moon stars scattered across black. My breath plumed white. The ground was hard under my boots, frost crunching with each step. The barn loomed ahead, dark, silent. Dorothy used to stable 2 horses there back when Allison was young. Now it held old equipment, hay bales, memories of a life that felt impossibly distant. I didn't turn on the flashlight, let my eyes adjust. Approached from an angle, listening. Nothing, just wind rattling the loose siding. 11:45 p.m. I eased open the side door. The hinges screamed. Inside, darkness thick enough to choke on. The smell of old hay motor oil, ancient wood. I clicked on the flashlight. The beam cut through shadows, illuminating dust motes, cobwebs, the rusted shell of Dorothy's old Ford tractor. "Hello!" My voice echoed off the rafters. Silence. Then movement. Fast. To my left. I spun my hand, dropping to the knife. "Don't." A woman's voice. Calm. Authoritative. "I'm not here to hurt you." The beam found her. Mid-40s, dark hair, pulled back, practical clothes, jeans, boots, a black jacket. The same woman from the cafe. The same sharp eyes that missed nothing. But now she was holding up a badge. FBI. Russell Hayes. She lowered the badge. "I'm Special Agent Veronica Hart. Your wife was working with the Bureau before she passed away, and now I need your help to finish what she started." I lowered the knife, but didn't let go. "FBI." My voice came out hoarse. Dorothy never told me anything. She couldn't. Hart stepped closer, her face shadowed in the flashlight's glow. 6 months before she passed, your wife contacted our Boston field office. She discovered something on this property. Something dangerous. The barn suddenly felt too small, too cold. What kind of something? Unusual activity. Late-night vehicles with no headlights. Sounds in the woods, voices, machinery. She started documenting everything. Hart pulled out her phone, swiped through photos. "These are from her emails to us." I recognized Dorothy's handwriting. Date-stamped notes. Blurry photos taken from the kitchen window of trucks moving through our back acreage at 2 a.m. My hand tightened on the knife handle. Why didn't she tell me? She was protecting you. Hart's voice softened. Your wife was meticulous, smart. She knew if she told you, you'd confront whoever was trespassing, and that would have put you both at risk. Risk from what? Hart met my eyes. There's a natural cave system under your property. Limestone formations, hidden entrance near the old well. Someone's been using it as a distribution point for controlled substances. The words took a moment to land. Drugs. On my land. A significant operation. Your farm's location is perfect, rural, isolated, close to major highways. They bring shipments in at night, store them underground, move them out before dawn. She paused. Yeah, we've been tracking a network run by a man named Sergei Kozlov, Russian national based in Boston. Very dangerous and very connected. And Dominic. The name tasted bitter. We believe your son-in-law facilitated the arrangement. He has the financial expertise to launder money, the real estate connections to identify properties. Dorothy started suspecting him when he kept pressuring her to sell. The spreadsheets, the persistent offers from Pinnacle Holdings. Dominic's visit this afternoon with his veiled threats. Now, how long has this been going on? At least 18 months, maybe longer. Dorothy didn't discover it until last spring. By early autumn, she'd gathered enough evidence that we opened a formal investigation. She agreed to work with us. Where a wire document conversations get us proof we could use in court. I thought of Dorothy, my careful, brave wife, walking around with FBI equipment collecting evidence against criminals operating beneath our home. While I was at grain supplier meetings, oblivious, what happened? My throat was so tight I could barely force the words out. November 15th. What really happened? Hart's expression shifted. Harder. Grimmer. We lost contact with her that afternoon. She was supposed to check in at 6 p.m. She didn't. We had agents en route, but she stopped. Started again. Russell, what happened to your wife wasn't accidental. Someone discovered she was working with us, and they made sure she couldn't continue. The barn tilted. I grabbed the tractor for support. You're telling me I couldn't say it. Couldn't make the words real. I'm telling you, Dorothy was taken from you, and the people responsible are still here, still using your land, still profiting from her silence. Rage hit like a freight train, hot, blinding. My wife, my Dorothy, had been trying to protect this farm, protect me, and someone had silenced her for it. I'd spent a year drowning in grief, believing she'd fallen in the dark, believing it was an accident, a cruel twist of fate. But it wasn't fate. It was them. Dominic, Kozlov, whoever else was involved in this operation. They'd taken her from me. The evidence box. My voice came out different, colder. Dorothy's note said the truth was buried where the roses bloom. She left something for me to find. Hart's eyes sharpened. Show me. We moved fast. Out of the barn across the frost-hard ground. The Memorial Rose Garden was on the east side of the property, sheltered by a stand of old pines. 24 bushes Dorothy had tended for 15 years, their bare branches skeletal in the moonlight. I knelt at the center where the stone marker bore her mother's name. She said to dig deep. Hart produced a small folding shovel from her jacket. Military grade. Let me. No. I took it. This is my land. My wife. I'll dig. 100 a.m. The ground was hard, resisting the blade. Each strike sent shocks up my arms. Hart stood watch, her hand resting on something under her jacket. A gun, probably. 6 inches, 1 foot, 18 inches. My shoulders burned. Sweat froze on my face. But I kept digging. 2 feet down, the shovel hit something solid. Metal. I cleared the dirt with my hands. A box emerged, fireproof like the one from the café, but larger. Locked with a combination dial. Dorothy's birthday. I muttered, spinning the numbers. 04-17 click. Inside, USB drives. Folders of documents, photos, audio recording devices, a detailed ledger in Dorothy's handwriting documenting dates, times, vehicle descriptions, license plates. Everything the FBI would need. And at the bottom, a sealed envelope. My name in Dorothy's script. Hart's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression changing. We need to move. Now. What? FBI backup is 10 minutes out, but someone else is closer. That's when I heard it. Engines, multiple vehicles approaching fast. Hart grabbed my arm, pulled me down behind the rose bushes. Stay low. You said FBI backup. Those aren't our vehicles. Headlights swept across the property. 3 vehicles, 2 SUVs, and a sedan. They stopped 50 yards from us, engines idling. The sedan's door opened. In the ambient light, I recognized the sleek profile. The expensive paint job, Dominic's black Mercedes. Hart's hand moved to her weapon. Russell, listen carefully. When I say run, you take that box and head for the tree line. Don't stop. Don't look back. I'm not leaving. You're the only witness who knows where this evidence was buried. If they take you, everything Dorothy worked for is gone. Her voice was steel. You run. I'll cover you. The SUV doors opened. Men climbed out. Too far to see faces, but their movements were coordinated. Professional, not cops, not FBI. Dominic's voice carried across the cold air. I know you're here, Russell, and I know you found something you shouldn't have. He'd been watching, waiting, and now we were trapped. If you're still with me after what we just uncovered, drop a shocked in the comments so I know you're here. Fair warning, what happens next gets intense, and some details are enhanced for storytelling. If you'd rather step away, now's the time. Otherwise, let's see how this confrontation unfolds. Hart drew her weapon. I clutched the metal box against my chest, shielding it. 3 vehicles, doors opening. Dominic stepped into the light. Then Allison, pale and shaking. Behind them, a man built like concrete. Bruno, Kozlov's enforcer. Russell, Dominic's voice was calm. Put down the box. Like hell. I stayed low. This is my land. My wife's evidence. Your wife made a mistake getting involved in business that didn't concern her. Business rage exploded. You took Dorothy from me, used my land for narcotics, and my daughter. I looked at Allison. Did you know what they did to your mother? Daddy, tears streamed down her face. I didn't know Mom was investigating. I swear, shut up. Dominic's command was sharp. Bruno's hand moved toward his jacket. Hart's voice cut through. Federal agent hands, where I can see them, lights exploded, blinding white floods from every direction. FBI, put your hands in the air. Black SUVs roared in surrounding us. Agents in body armor poured out, weapons raised. Tactical, professional, overwhelming. Hart stood. About time, Cole. A man in his 40s, FBI vest over his jacket, approached. So Dominic Cruz Bruno Volkov, you're under arrest for conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, racketeering, and obstruction of justice. This is ridiculous, Dominic spat. I'm a financial advisor. We have 18 months of surveillance, bank records, wire transfers, and evidence your mother-in-law compiled before you had her silenced. Agent Cole gestured. Cuff him. 2 agents moved in. Dominic resisted, then went limp. The cuffs clicked. Bruno didn't resist, just stared at me with dead eyes. Another agent approached, dragging someone in handcuffs. Detective Vincent Morales. Found him watching with binoculars, radio tuned to their frequency. Morales wouldn't meet my eyes. The cop who'd warned me, who'd been feeding Dominic information all along. Don't trust the police. Allison Hayes Cruz. Cole turned to my daughter. You're also under arrest. No. The word tore out of me. She didn't. Daddy, I'm sorry. Allison sobbed as an agent took her arm. I didn't know about Mom. I thought it was real estate. I thought Dominic was helping you. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. Please, Daddy, please. They led her away. My daughter, in handcuffs. I stood in Dorothy's rose garden surrounded by flashing lights, unable to breathe. An EMT appeared. Sir, you're in shock. Let me check you. I let her take my blood pressure. Everything felt distant, underwater. Hart approached. Russell, you should open the box. Dorothy wanted you to read it. My hands shook as I opened it. USB drives, documents, audio equipment, a ledger in Dorothy's handwriting, and at the bottom, an envelope. my name in her script. I tore it open. My dearest Russell, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for keeping secrets. I had to protect you and Allison. I've been working with the FBI for 4 months. Our farm, your family's land, has been used to distribute illegal substances. Dominic arranged it. He needed property no one would suspect. I discovered it by accident. Late-night vehicles, sounds near the old well. I found the cave entrance, saw what they'd stockpiled. I couldn't let it continue. Not on our land. I've set up a trust fund, $390,000. Mitchell Goldstein has the details. It's protected. They can't touch it. Russell, you're 67. This farm has been in my family for generations, but it's also been a burden. You don't have to keep it. Whatever you decide, I support you. I love you. From that diner in Portsmouth 35 years ago, I knew you were the one. You gave me Allison. You gave me everything. If I don't make it through this, know I have no regrets. Except one. I wish I'd had more time with you. Stay safe. Trust Agent Hart and Agent Cole. All my love, Dorothy P.S. Russell. There's one more thing about Dominic. He's not who you think. Ask Dennis to check his Boston address, 227 Commonwealth Avenue. I love you forever. D. I read the last line 3 times. Tears I'd held back for a year broke through. I knelt in the dirt in Dorothy's rose garden and wept. For my wife, for my daughter, for everything poisoned from within. Hart's hand settled on my shoulder. She didn't speak, just stood there while I fell apart. When I could breathe again, I looked up. Boston, 227 Commonwealth Avenue. What's there? Her expression was grim. We'll find out. But Russell, whatever Dorothy discovered, it's going to be hard to hear. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it against my chest. I'd already lost everything. How much worse could it get? I sat in the kitchen at 4 a.m., Dorothy's letter still gripped in my hand. The paper was creased, worn from being folded and unfolded. I'd read it 6 times. Memorized every word. Asked Dennis to check his Boston address, 227 Commonwealth Avenue. The arrests had happened hours ago. Flashing lights. Handcuffs. My daughter crying as they led her away. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was empty. The coffee pot hissed. I poured another cup. My 4th. Maybe 5th. Sleep wasn't coming. The phone rang. Dennis, Dorothy's younger brother, 61, a year younger than she'd been. Russell, I'm on my way. I found something about Dominic. Something you need to see. What kind of something? Not over the phone? 2 hours. He hung up. I stood at the window watching darkness fade to gray. The rose garden was still cordoned off with yellow tape. FBI evidence markers dotted the ground. Dorothy had knelt there burying evidence, hoping I'd find it. And I'd been oblivious. By 6 a.m., Dennis's truck pulled up. He climbed out carrying a laptop bag and a thick manila folder. I opened the door. He pulled me into a hug. Dennis wasn't usually demonstrative, but Dorothy's passing had changed things. I'm sorry, he said, for all of it. Come in. He sat up at the kitchen table, the same table where Dominic had spread his threatening spreadsheets yesterday, a lifetime ago. Coffee. Please. He opened the laptop. After you told me about Dorothy's note, the Boston address, I couldn't sleep. So I started digging. Property records, public databases. I've got a friend in Boston real estate. He turned the screen toward me. 227 Commonwealth Avenue. It's a condo, 2-bedroom, purchased years ago. By Dominic and Victoria Cruz. The name landed like a stone. Victoria. Dennis pulled papers from the folder. Marriage certificate. Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Dominic Alexander Cruz and Victoria Ann Morrison. Married June 12th. I stared at the document. Official seal, signatures, witnesses. That's impossible. Dominic married Allison in 3 years after this marriage certificate. Dennis laid out more papers. Joint tax returns spanning 7 years, filed as married, joint bank accounts, utility bills in both names. My chest tightened. You're saying Dominic was already married when he married my daughter? The wedding Allison had wasn't legal. Dominic never got divorced. He's still married to Victoria. Dennis pulled out a photo. They have 2 children. I looked at the image. Dominic, younger, genuinely smiling with his arm around a woman. Pretty dark-haired mid-30s. 2 kids, a boy around 8, a girl around 5. Beach photo. Normal, happy family. The boy had Dominic's eyes. Their names are Ethan and Sophie, Dennis said quietly. Ethan's in 3rd grade. Sophie's in kindergarten. Victoria works as a dental hygienist. They live in that condo, and Dominic spends at least 3 days a week there. 3 days a week. My voice sounded distant. Allison thought he had business trips, client meetings in Boston. He had a family in Boston, a whole other life. Dennis closed the laptop. Russell, your daughter isn't Dominic's wife. She's his mistress, and she had no idea. I stood, paced to the window. The sun was up now, cold November light washing over the property, and Allison, my only child, had been played, used, manipulated by a man who already had a wife and kids. He needed the farm, I said. The pieces clicked together. The cave system, the isolated location. He couldn't just buy property too much scrutiny. But if he married into a farm family, he could access the land without suspicion, Dennis finished. Dorothy started noticing, started investigating, and when she got too close, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. Allison was a pawn. Allison was a victim, just like you, just like Dorothy. Dennis stood. I know she's been arrested. I know she was involved. But Russell, she thought she was married to him. She thought she was helping her father. She still pushed me to sell. Still. I rubbed my face. My eyes burned. I don't know what to think anymore. You don't have to decide right now. Dennis's voice was gentle. One thing at a time. The phone rang again. I grabbed it. Hayes. Russell, it's Agent Hart. Her voice was sharp, urgent. We've been processing the evidence from the box. There's something else about Allison. Something you need to see immediately. My stomach dropped. What is it? Not over the phone. I need you at the Portland field office, now. Can you leave right away? I looked at Dennis, at the papers spread across my table. Evidence of Dominic's bigamy, the photo of his real family, and now something else. Something urgent enough that Hart couldn't wait. And what did you find? Documents involving your wife. Hart's tone shifted. Russell, bring someone with you. You shouldn't hear this alone. How soon can you get here? My hand tightened on the phone. 1.5 hours. I'll be waiting, front desk. Don't talk to anyone else. She hung up. I stood there, phone against my ear, listening to dial tone. Dennis was already gathering the papers. I'll drive. she said immediately. Then we leave now. He grabbed his keys. Come on, Dennis. Whatever it is, you're not facing it alone. His hand on my shoulder was steady. Dorothy would want me here, so I'm here. I grabbed my jacket, followed him out to his truck. The manila folder sat on the seat between us. Evidence of Dominic's double life. And somewhere in Portland, Agent Hart was waiting with something else. Something urgent. Something involving Dorothy's documents. Something I shouldn't hear alone. Dennis started the engine. You ready? I looked back at the farmhouse. Yellow tape. Evidence markers. The rose garden where I'd found truth buried 2 feet deep. No, I said. But let's go anyway. He pulled out of the driveway, gravel crunching under the tires, and I wondered how much more truth I could stand before I broke completely. Dennis drove me to the FBI field office in Portland. I hadn't slept since the rose garden. The world outside blurred past gray and cold. We pulled into a parking garage beneath a glass federal building. Agent Hart met us in the lobby, looking as exhausted as I felt. Russell, thank you for coming. She nodded at Dennis. You must be Dorothy's brother. Dennis Hayes. She led us through security up an elevator down a hallway. Conference room 4B. Inside a table covered with documents, evidence bags, a laptop, and a man in his 50s wearing a 3-piece suit and wire-rimmed glasses. Russell Hayes, this is Mitchell Goldstein. He was your wife's attorney. Goldstein stood, extended his hand. Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Dorothy was a remarkable woman. I shook his hand, said nothing. Hart gestured to chairs. Please sit. She placed 2 documents side by side. This is your wife's actual will. Drafted 2 months before she passed away, notarized, witnessed, legally filed. I looked at Dorothy's signature, her handwriting neat, careful loops I'd known for 35 years. It establishes a trust fund of $390,000 in your name. Protected. The farm remains yours to decide its future. Your choice. Goldstein leaned forward. Dorothy wanted you secure, free to make decisions without financial stress. Hart placed another document beside the first. This is a will Allison presented 1 month after your wife passed away. Similar format, similar language, but wrong. Like this version leaves everything to Allison. Complete control. Hart's finger traced the signature. That signature is forged. The word hit like a fist. How do you know? Goldstein pulled out magnified photos. Handwriting analysis. Your wife's signature has consistent pressure patterns, specific letter formations. This forgery matches the general shape, but the pressure is wrong. The D in Dorothy is too round. Hart added more photos. Ink dating. Your wife signed the real documents in September. This forged document used different ink, different paper, created after she was gone. Digital forensics confirms it, Goldstein continued, where the forged documents were created on Allison's laptop shortly after Dorothy passed away. We have timestamps. File metadata. She scanned Dorothy's signature from old checks, then digitally placed it on new documents. I stared at the papers. My daughter's crime laid out in technical detail. Why? My throat tightened. Dorothy left her money. Why would she? Dominic. Hart's voice was flat. He needed immediate access to the farm. The operation was expanding. Kozlov was pressuring him. And Dominic had 2 families to support, Victoria and the kids in Boston, Allison here. He was drowning in debt. The only solution was to control this property and sell it. $3.9 million, enough to pay off Kozlov and disappear. So he told Allison to forge her mother's will. We believe so. Allison claims she didn't know the full extent of his operation. She admits the forgery, but insists Dominic told her Dorothy's actual will was unfair and needed correction. Hart's tone made clear what she thought of that. Dennis spoke. What happens to her now? Allison will be charged with forgery, fraud, and accessory to the conspiracy. If she cooperates, testifies against Dominic, we can offer a plea deal. 4 to 7 years. And Dominic? Federal charges: conspiracy, racketeering, fraud, bigamy. 40 to 50 years. No parole. Hart closed the folder. He'll be 70 when eligible for release. Goldstein slid papers to me. These are your wife's authentic documents. Everything is in order. The $390,000 is yours, completely protected. Allison's forgery never made it past initial review. I flagged it immediately. $390,000. Dorothy's gift. Money I'd rather not have if it meant she was still here. The trust was funded from her personal assets, Goldstein explained. She sold her mother's jewelry collection, liquidated bonds, withdrew savings carefully. She did it quietly so Dominic wouldn't notice. The withdrawals, $42,500. Dorothy protecting me, preparing for the worst. One more thing. Hart showed me her phone. News article. And this went public this morning. Drug ring busted on historic Maine farm. Your name isn't mentioned, but people will figure it out. Dennis stood. Russell needs rest. Anything else? Hart shook her head. Not right now. And if you decide to visit Allison, that's your choice. But she's been asking for you. The drive home was silent. When we reached the farm, Dennis helped me inside. I'll stay tonight. Guest room. I'm fine. You're not fine. Let me help. I was too tired to argue. That evening, a knock at the door. Dennis came back with an envelope. Courier. From Cumberland County Jail. My stomach dropped. I opened it. A single piece of lined paper. Allison's handwriting shaky, hurried. Daddy, please let me explain. I know you hate me, but please come. I need to tell you everything. Allison. I read it 3 times. Dennis looked over my shoulder. You going? I don't know. She's still your daughter. She forged her mother's will. Tried to steal everything Dorothy left me. She was also manipulated by a man who had her believing she was married to him, who used her, lied to her. Dennis sat across from me. I'm not saying what she did was right. I'm saying it's complicated. I folded the letter, tucked it in my pocket. My daughter was in jail. She'd betrayed me, betrayed Dorothy's memory, and she was asking me to hear her side. Dorothy's voice echoed. Stay safe. Trust your instincts. What would my instincts tell me about Allison I didn't know anymore? I held Allison's letter all night, unable to sleep. By morning, Dennis found me at the kitchen table, the paper worn from being read and reread. You going? He asked, pouring coffee. I don't know. He sat across from me. She's still your daughter, Russell. Whatever she's done, she's still yours. She forged Dorothy's will, tried to steal everything. She was also manipulated by a man she believed was her husband, who lied to her about everything. Dennis's voice was gentle but firm. I'm not saying forgive her. I'm saying hear her. Dorothy would want you to. Dorothy. I pulled out her letter, the full version I'd found in the evidence box. I'd read parts of it to Hart and Dennis, but there was more. Personal parts. Just for me. I unfolded it. read the section I'd skipped before. Russell, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I kept secrets. I put myself in danger. But please, my love, don't let this pain destroy you. You've been through war. You've survived losses before. You're stronger than you know. About Allison, I hope she's not involved deeply. I hope Dominic hasn't pulled her into this darkness. She's our daughter. She makes mistakes. She's stubborn like you, emotional like me. But underneath, she has a good heart. If she's done something wrong, she'll need to face consequences. But Russell, don't lose her completely. Don't let anger poison what's left of our family. Live, my darling. Don't just survive, love. Forgive if you can. I'll always be with you. Dorothy. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it back in my pocket. Okay, I said. I'll go. Dennis drove. Cumberland County Jail was 40 minutes south, a squat concrete building surrounded by chain link and barbed wire. Gray. Institutional. Wrong for my daughter. But she'd put herself here. We parked. Dennis stayed in the truck. Take your time. I'll be here. Inside, fluorescent lights. Linoleum floors. The smell of industrial cleaner and despair. I signed in, showed ID, went through security. Everything metal removed. Belt. Watch. Even my wedding ring went in a tray. They led me to a visiting room. Not the open kind with tables. This was the secure section. Glass partitions. Phones. For inmates considered flight risks or dangerous. My daughter. Dangerous. I sat in a plastic chair. Waited. The door on the other side opened. Allison shuffled in, escorted by a guard. Orange jumpsuit. No makeup. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd lost weight. Her face was gaunt shadows under her eyes. She looked 10 years older than the polished woman who'd sat in my kitchen 4 days ago. 4 days. It felt like a lifetime. She sat, picked up the phone. Her hand shook. I picked up mine. Daddy. Her voice cracked. Tears spilled immediately. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I said nothing, just looked at her. I didn't know, she continued, words tumbling out. I swear I didn't know about the narcotics, not until October. I found texts on Dominic's phone, asked him about it. He said it was a business investment gone wrong that he was trying to get out. I believed him. You believed him. My voice was flat. He was my husband. Or I thought he was. Fresh tears. I didn't know about Victoria, about the kids. I didn't know any of it until the FBI told me. But you knew about the forgery. She flinched. Yes. Dominic said he said Mom's will was unfair, that she'd written it when she was upset, not thinking clearly. He showed me a draft he said she'd wanted to make but never finished. He said we were just completing her wishes. And you believed that too. I wanted to believe him. Her voice broke. He was my husband, my partner. I loved him. And he was so convincing, Dad. So, she pressed her palm against the glass. I know that's not an excuse. I know I should have questioned, should have checked. But I was scared. Scared of what? Of him. She looked down. By the time I started suspecting things weren't right, I was in too deep. He'd get angry when I asked questions. She stopped. He'd threaten things, subtly. Say things like, you wouldn't want anyone to think you were involved in financial improprieties, or your father's farm could be investigated for tax issues. I didn't realize he was manipulating me. I just felt trapped. I studied her face, trying to find the truth beneath the tears. When did you find out about your mother? Her whole body shook. The FBI told me. After they arrested me, they said Mom had been working with them, that she'd been investigating Dominic, that what happened to her wasn't an accident. She looked up mascara-streaked face. I swear on everything, Daddy, I didn't know. I would never. Mom was my best friend. I loved her. I miss her every single day. Yet you forged her signature. Yes. She didn't look away. I did. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I was wrong. I was stupid. I let Dominic manipulate me. But I never wanted Mom to get hurt. If I'd known what he was really doing, what he was capable of. She couldn't finish. The silence stretched between us. Just the sound of her crying, the hum of fluorescent lights, the distant clang of metal doors. I thought of Dorothy's letter. Don't lose her completely. I thought of my daughter at 5 bringing me dandelions, at 12 helping me fix the barn door, at 20 graduating college while Dorothy and I cheered, and I thought of her at 38, broken and orange jumpsuited behind glass. You'll have to pay for what you did, I said finally. I know. You'll cooperate with the FBI. You'll testify against Dominic. You'll serve your time. I will. Whatever it takes. Her eyes pleaded. Daddy, I know you probably hate me. I understand if you never want to see me again, but please know I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I stood. She stood too, pressing both hands against the glass. I don't hate you, Allison. The words came slowly. But I don't know how to forgive you yet either. What you did to your mother's memory, to me, it's going to take time. I understand. But you're still my daughter. I placed my hand on the glass, matching hers. And when you get out, if you get out, we'll figure out what comes next. Her face crumpled. Thank you. Thank you, Daddy. The guard touched her shoulder. Time was up. I love you, she said as they led her away. I couldn't say it back. Not yet. But I nodded. Dennis was waiting in the truck. He didn't ask how it went. Just drove. That evening, I stood in Dorothy's bedroom. Our bedroom. The room we'd shared for 35 years. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her books still stacked on the nightstand. The lavender sachets still tucked in drawers. I pulled out her letter. Read the last lines again. Live, love, forgive if you can. Outside the window, the first snow of the season began to fall. Soft, silent, covering the farm in white. The rose garden, the barn, the fields Dorothy had loved. Winter was here. Long, cold, testing. But winters didn't last forever. Spring would come eventually. I just had to survive until then. March. The last snow melted from the fields. I stood before the memorial rose garden, watering can in hand, and for the first time in 4 months, I felt like I could breathe. The garden had expanded. What had been 24 bushes was now 60 new plantings arranged in circles around Dorothy's mother's stone. Peace roses, their bare branches showing first hints of green. 4 months since that night. Since arrests and handcuffs and my daughter crying as they led her away. 4 months of winter. Long, cold, testing. But I'd survived. I was 68 now. Birthday had passed in February. I'd lost weight, face more weathered but stronger in ways that had nothing to do with muscle. Russell, Dennis called from the barn. You want to check this beam? I walked across soft ground to where Dennis stood with tools. The barn renovation was his idea. "Can't let this place fall apart," he'd said in January. So he'd stayed, moved into the guest room, helped me work through winter darkness. The beam was solid. I nodded. Dennis smiled and went back to work. Movement caught my eye. Two figures coming from the south field, Owen and Morgan. I'd hired them in February. Young couple, late 20s, looking for farm work. Owen, tall, rangy degree in sustainable agriculture. Morgan, compact, strong background in veterinary science. They were exactly what this farm needed. Energy. Hope. Laughter. "Mr. Hayes." Owen waved. "Irrigation lines are cleared. We can start next week." Morgan grinned, mud-splattered. "I've found 3 old horseshoes. Want 'em for the barn. Dorothy would like that." They headed to the cottage, the old farmhand quarters I'd renovated with trust money. They'd moved in 3 weeks ago, and already it felt lived in. I'd used Dorothy's $390,000 carefully. Security-first cameras, motion lights, new locks. FBI approved sealing the cave entrance once they'd finished evidence collection. 2 tons of concrete. That entrance would never open again. Rose Garden expansion came next. Not practical, but necessary. A place to honor Dorothy. The rest went into infrastructure. New tractor, irrigation system, barn materials, a greenhouse half-built, and the cottage for Owen and Morgan. Because this farm was too big for one man alone. Inside, I made coffee. The kitchen still smelled like Dorothy, sometimes lavender and vanilla. Her things remained. Her mug, her glasses on the windowsill. I hadn't been ready to pack them away. Maybe I never would be. The mail came. Bills, advertisements, and a thin envelope from Cumberland County Jail. Allison's handwriting. I set it aside. Unopened. She'd written twice a week since January. Apologizing, describing therapy, asking about the farm. I hadn't replied. But I kept every letter in Dorothy's desk drawer. Not ready to forgive, but not ready to throw them away either. Progress, I supposed. Dennis came in for lunch. We ate in silence soup Morgan had made bakery bread. "Hear from Agent Hart?" Dennis asked. "Last week. Dominic's getting 45 years. And Allison, 4 years. Plea deal went through. Parole after 3 with good behavior." Dennis nodded. Didn't push. After lunch, Owen knocked on the office doorframe. "Mr. Hayes, we found something in the barn." He handed me a spiral notebook. Worn, stained, Dorothy's handwriting garden journal. I opened it carefully. Sketches, plans, lists in her script. Hayes Heritage Farm. Organic and educational organic vegetables. Greenhouse for year-round. Growing educational tours for school groups. Farm-to-table dinners. Sustainable farming workshops. Page after page of her vision. On the last page, dated 2 months before I lost her. "This farm has been in my family for generations. But it doesn't have to stay the same. Growth isn't betrayal. Change isn't forgetting. Maybe we can build something new while honoring what came before." Russell will think I'm crazy, but I think he'll love it once he sees it working. My vision blurred. She'd been planning this while investigating Dominic, while collecting evidence, while preparing to risk everything. She'd still been dreaming of the future. "Mr. Hayes." Morgan's voice was gentle. "You okay?" "Yeah." I cleared my throat. "Thank you for finding this." Owen and Morgan exchanged a look. "If you want help making it happen." Owen said, "We're in." I looked at them, at their hopeful faces, at the journal full of Dorothy's dreams, at the farm coming back to life. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it." Let's build Hayes Heritage Farm. Morgan grinned. Owen pulled out his phone to take notes, and for the first time since November, I felt something that wasn't grief or anger. I felt purpose. That evening, an email notification popped up. Subject: farm tour inquiry for June. Dear Mr. Hayes, I'm a teacher at Kennebunk Elementary. I heard about your property, and am looking for farms willing to host educational tours for our third grade class. Would you be interested? Sarah Mitchell. I stared at the screen. A year ago, this would have been impossible. The farm was barely functioning. I was barely functioning. Everything was falling apart. But now I looked out the window. Owen and Morgan crossing the yard hand in hand. Dennis securing the barn door, whistling. The rose garden stretching across the hillside. Dorothy's journal lay open. Maybe we can build something new while honoring what came before. Her letter echoed. Live. Don't just survive, live. I clicked reply. Dear Ms. Mitchell, yes, we'd be happy to host your class. Let's talk about dates. Russell Hayes. I hit send. Through the window, I watched sunset over the farm. The barn Dorothy had painted. The fields her family had worked for generations. The rose garden where I'd found truth. The first buds appeared on the bushes. Tight, green promises. By June, they'd be blooming yellow and pink and full of life. Maybe Dorothy was right. Maybe it was time to live. June. The farm overflowed with laughter. The third tour group that week was exploring the organic garden, and I couldn't quite believe this was happening. 20 school children from Kennebunk Elementary. Sarah Mitchell's third graders clustered around Morgan as she explained companion planting. Owen demonstrated the irrigation system to their parents. Dennis stood near the barn with his camera documenting everything for the farm's new website. Hayes Heritage Farm. Dorothy's dream alive. 3 months since I'd clicked reply on that first inquiry. 3 months of work preparing fields, building raised beds, creating pathways, printing brochures. Owen and Morgan had thrown themselves into it with an enthusiasm that reminded me why I'd hired them. And it was working. We'd hosted 15 tours in June alone. School groups, families, a garden club from Portland. The organic vegetable stand at the end of the driveway sold out every Saturday. Between tours and produce, we were bringing in steady income enough to cover expenses and pay Owen and Morgan properly. Mr. Hayes. One of the kids tugged my sleeve. Is it true you're 68 years old and you do all this farming? I have help. I gestured to Owen and Morgan. Good help. My grandpa's 68 and he just watches TV. I smiled. Tell your grandpa farming keeps you young. After the tour left, I stood in the rose garden now in full bloom, 60 bushes covered in yellow and pink flowers. Dorothy's memorial. A living monument to her courage. Russell. Dennis approached, tablet in hand. We've got 3 more tour requests for July, and someone from the Portland Press-Herald wants to do a feature article. About what? About this. The farm. The transformation. He paused. They know about the case. About Dorothy. They want to tell the story of how you turned tragedy into something positive. I wasn't sure how I felt about that, but Dorothy had always said sunlight was the best disinfectant. Maybe the story needed telling. Okay. Set it up. 2 weeks later, a different kind of letter arrived. FBI letterhead. Washington, D.C., Mr. Hayes. You are cordially invited to receive the FBI Director's Community Leadership Award in recognition of your cooperation in the investigation and dismantling of an interstate narcotics distribution network. Dennis read it over my shoulder. They want to give you an award. For what? Getting my wife. I stopped. For being stupid enough not to notice what was happening on my own land. For helping them take down Kozlov's entire operation. for testifying, for providing evidence. Dennis's voice was firm. Take the win, Russell. You've earned it. July. Dennis and I flew to Washington, my first time on a plane in 15 years. The FBI headquarters building was glass and steel and security checkpoints. Agent Hart met us in the lobby. She looked different in formal wear suit and heels instead of tactical gear. Russell, thank you for coming. Didn't think I had a choice. You always have a choice. She smiled. Come on. Ceremony's in 10 minutes. The auditorium held maybe 100 people. Other award recipients, their families, FBI personnel. I sat in the front row, uncomfortable in the suit Dennis had made me buy. The FBI director spoke about courage and civic duty. Then Agent Hart took the podium. Russell Hayes lost his wife to a criminal conspiracy operating beneath his family's farm. But instead of retreating into grief, he chose to fight. He provided critical evidence that led to the arrest and conviction of 14 individuals, including the head of a major narcotics distribution network. His cooperation resulted in the seizure of over $2 million in controlled substances and the dismantling of a pipeline that had operated for nearly 2 years. I barely heard the rest, walked to the stage, shook hands, accepted a plaque and a certificate I'd probably never hang. They asked me to say a few words. I looked at the audience, at Hart and Cole in the front row, at Dennis, who'd supported me through the darkest months. I didn't do this for an award, I said. I did this for my wife Dorothy. She was the real hero. She discovered the operation. She collected evidence. She worked with the FBI knowing it put her in danger. My voice caught. She gave her life protecting our land and stopping criminals from using it to harm people. Everything I did to finish what she started. The applause was polite, professional, but Hart's eyes were wet. Afterward, she pulled me aside. Dorothy would be proud of the farm, of you, of everything. How's Allison? Cooperating fully. Model prisoner. Could be out in 4 years with good behavior. Is she really sorry? Hart considered the question. I think so, but only you can decide if that's enough. Back in Maine, I sat at Dorothy's desk, pulled out paper and pen, wrote slowly, carefully. Daughter, I'm still angry. I won't lie about that. What you did to your mother's memory, to me, it's hard to forgive. But I'm trying to understand. Dominic manipulated you, used you. That doesn't erase your choices, but it gives them context. The farm is doing well. We've started educational tours. Mom's dream of Hayes Heritage Farm is real. She would be proud. I can't promise I'll ever fully forgive. But you're still my daughter. And when you get out, we'll figure out what comes next. Dad, I sealed it. Mailed it the next morning. A week later, I received a reply. Just 3 words in Allison's shaky handwriting. Thank you, Daddy. Summer rolled on. Tours every week. The Portland article ran, bringing more visitors. Owen and Morgan got engaged. Dennis started dating a woman from the garden club. Life blooming like the roses. But August became September. September became October. And November approached. I stood on the porch one evening, watching Owen and Morgan's cottage lights. Dennis inside washing dishes, radio playing. The farm alive with movement and hope. But November meant something else. Dominic's trial. Nearly 2 years since Dorothy passed. The prosecutors had delayed building their case, gathering evidence from multiple jurisdictions. Now it was time. I'd have to sit in a courtroom and watch them sentence the man who'd destroyed my family, who'd used my daughter, who'd taken my wife. Justice was coming. But I wasn't sure I was ready for it. Late September. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the summons. Cumberland County Superior Court. State of Maine versus Dominic Alexander Cruz. Trial date November 8th. Dennis set his hand on my shoulder. You need to get away before the trial starts. Go somewhere Dorothy always wanted to go. What are you talking about? Ireland, County Clare, the cliffs of Moher. He sat down. Dorothy wrote to her cousin Kathleen there for years. She always wanted to take you. You need to say goodbye properly, Russell, before you sit in that courtroom. My throat tightened. The past 10 months had been a blur, arrests, interrogations, rebuilding the farm letters from Allison I couldn't bring myself to answer. She'd want you to do this, Dennis said quietly. That decided me. 3 days later, I was on a plane to Shannon. First time I'd left the country in 40 years. I stared out the window at clouds over the Atlantic and thought about Dorothy. She used to tell me stories her grandmother had told her about the rocky coast of Clare, the stone walls threading through green fields, the ancient O'Brien Castle ruins. She'd wanted to see it, wanted us to go together. I'd always said someday. Someday never came. Now I was going alone with a small wooden box in my carry-on holding what remained of my wife. Shannon Airport was smaller than I expected. I rented a car and headed northwest toward the coast. The countryside opened up around me, impossibly green fields, divided by low stone walls, sheep scattered across hillsides, narrow roads winding through villages with names I couldn't pronounce. It was beautiful. Dorothy would have loved it. By late afternoon, I reached Doolin, a tiny village perched on the edge of the Atlantic. I'd booked a room at a bed and breakfast, a whitewashed cottage with a turf fire burning in the hearth and lace curtains in the windows. The owner, a woman in her 70s with silver hair and sharp blue eyes, met me at the door. Mr. Hayes. Yes, ma'am. Kathleen O'Brien. She extended her hand. Dorothy's second cousin. She wrote to me about you for years. My chest went tight. She did. Oh, I. Sent me Christmas cards, photos of your farm stories about your daughter. Kathleen's eyes softened. Oh, she was proud of you, Russell. Very proud. I couldn't speak, just nodded. Kathleen led me inside. The cottage smelled like bread and peat smoke. She poured tea without asking, set out soda bread and butter. I'm sorry for your loss, she said. Dorothy was a rare soul, strong, kind, brave. She was. My voice came out rough. You've come to scatter her ashes. At the cliffs, if that's appropriate. It's perfect. She patted my hand. The O'Briens have been in Clare for 800 years. Dorothy's great-grandmother was born just a few miles from here. She belongs to this place as much as she belongs to Maine. Tears burned my eyes. I blinked them back. Rest tonight, Kathleen said gently. Tomorrow I'll take you to the cliffs. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Kathleen drove along the coast, the Atlantic stretching gray-green to the horizon. Then I saw them. The cliffs of Moher rose like a fortress from the sea-black stone walls, plunging 700 feet straight down into churning water. Waves crashed against the base, sending up plumes of white spray. Seabirds wheeled and cried in the wind. It was overwhelming, majestic, ancient. Dorothy's grandmother used to bring her here as a girl, Kathleen said. Before the family emigrated, she'd tell Dorothy stories about the cliffs, how they'd stood for millions of years, how they'd outlast all of us. I stepped out of the car. The wind hit me like a wall, cold and wild, and carrying the salt smell of the ocean. I clutched the wooden box tighter. Kathleen walked beside me to the edge. Take your time. I'll be by the car. I stood alone at the edge of the world, opened the box. You did the right thing, Dorothy, I said into the wind. My voice cracked. You were braver than I ever was. You saw what was happening, and you fought back. You risked everything to protect our land, to stop them from hurting people. The wind whipped my words away. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening. I'm sorry I wasn't there that night. I tilted the box. The wind caught the ashes, lifting them, scattering them over the cliffs and into the sky and down toward the sea. They swirled in the updrafts, danced with the seabirds, disappeared into the vastness. You're home now, I whispered. You're free. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I felt something other than grief. I felt peace. Kathleen was waiting by the car. She handed me a handkerchief. She's still alive in what you're building. The farm, the tours, the roses. That's her legacy, Russell. Not what they did to her. What you're doing because of her. I looked back at the cliffs one last time. Dorothy wasn't in that wooden box. She never had been. She was in the farm we'd built together, in the rose garden, in Allison's letters, in Owen and Morgan's laughter, in every tour group that walked our fields. She was alive in the good we were doing. Thank you, I said to Kathleen. You're welcome back anytime. You're family. I flew home 3 days later. Dennis picked me up at Portland Airport. How was it? He asked. Good. Hard. But good. Back at the farm, Owen and Morgan were harvesting the last of the squash. The rose garden glowed gold and red in the October light. The barn Dennis had repaired stood solid and strong. I walked through Dorothy's memorial garden and felt her presence. Not haunting, not painful, just there. A warmth, a whisper of approval. October passed. I prepared for the trial, met with prosecutors, reviewed my testimony, steeled myself to face Dominic in court. A letter came from Cumberland County Jail. Allison's handwriting steadier now. Dad, they've asked me to testify at Dominic's trial. I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell them everything. I know it won't fix what I did, but maybe it will help. I hope you're okay. I think about you every day. Love, Allison. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it in Dorothy's desk with the others. November 1st, 2 years to the day since I lost Dorothy. I stood in front of the bedroom mirror, adjusting the tie Dennis had helped me pick out in July. Black suit, white shirt, polished shoes. Dennis waited downstairs, car keys in hand. We drove in silence through the November morning trees, bare sky gray, the world stripped down to essentials. Cumberland County Superior Court loomed ahead, a granite fortress flying the American flag. Dennis pulled into the parking lot, shut off the engine, turned to me. You ready? I looked at the courthouse, the place where Dominic Cruz would finally answer for what he'd done. Yeah, I said. Let's finish this. We walked up the steps together, into the cold marble lobby, toward the courtroom where truth and justice would collide. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt strong enough to face it. The courtroom was packed. I sat in the front row, staring at the back of Dominic Cruz's head. He wore a charcoal suit, perfectly styled hair, sitting between 2 defense attorneys. He hadn't looked at me once. Dennis sat beside me. Agent Hart and Agent Cole sat 2 rows back. Somewhere in the building, Allison waited in a holding cell. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. Judge Morrison entered, early 60s, gray hair, sharp eyes. She settled behind the bench. Case number 24 CR 1847, State of Maine and the United States of America versus Dominic Alexander Cruz. The prosecutor, Sarah Smith, stood. Your Honor, the defendant faces 6 counts: conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, money laundering, racketeering, obstruction of justice, bigamy. accessory to interference with a federal investigation. Each count landed like a hammer. Judge Morrison looked at Dominic. How does the defendant plead? He stood buttoning his jacket. Not guilty on all counts, Your Honor. His voice was smooth, confident, the same voice that had threatened me in my kitchen. The trial began. FBI agent Spencer Cole testified about the 18-month investigation, the surveillance Dorothy's compiled evidence. He showed photos of the cave system ledger's wire transfers. Dominic's attorneys objected constantly. Overruled, overruled, overruled. At noon, they brought Allison in. My daughter shuffled into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. She'd lost weight. Face pale, hollow-cheeked, hair limp. She didn't look at me. The bailiff uncuffed her at the witness stand. She raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth. And please state your name for the record. Allison Margaret Hayes Cruz. Her voice barely audible. How do you know the defendant? He's my... She stopped. I believed he was my husband. Smith walked her through it. The courtship. The wedding ceremony that wasn't legal. Years of lies. Dominic's business trips to Boston 3 days a week. When did you learn about the defendant's criminal activities? Last October, I found texts on his phone, shipment schedules, code words. He said it was a business deal gone wrong that he was trying to get out. Tears ran down her face. I believed him. I always believed him. And the falsified documents? Allison's face crumpled. He told me Mom's will was unfair, that she'd meant to change it. He showed me a draft. He said we were just completing her wishes. She looked at the jury. I was wrong. I forged my mother's signature. I tried to steal from my father. I'm so sorry. Dominic's attorney tore into her during cross-examination. Isn't it true you knew exactly what your husband was doing, that you helped facilitate the operation? No, I swear. Isn't it true you forged those documents to help Mr. Cruz profit from the drug operation? I didn't know about... Your Honor, the witness is lying to save herself. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked. Counsel, move on. When they released Allison, she walked past without looking up. The bailiff let her out. My daughter. Broken, but telling the truth. The afternoon brought Victoria Cruz. Simple blue dress, no jewelry, dark hair pulled back. She looked tired, defeated. Yes, she'd married Dominic years ago. Yes, they had 2 children. Yes, she'd believed he was a successful consultant. Yes, she'd had no idea about Allison until the FBI came. How did you feel when you learned Mr. Cruz had another relationship? Victoria's voice was steady. Betrayed, used, angry. But mostly I felt sorry for Allison. She was a victim too. More witnesses followed. Mitchell Goldstein, Owen and Morgan. Financial experts tracing money laundering. Then Smith called me. I walked to the stand, raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth. Mr. Hayes, tell us about your wife. I looked at the jury. Dorothy was the strongest person I ever knew. She discovered illegal activity on our property. She could have ignored it, but that wasn't who she was. She contacted the FBI. She collected evidence. She wore a wire. She risked everything to stop a criminal operation from using our land to distribute substances that destroy lives. And what happened to her? She was working with the FBI, gathering final evidence. And someone discovered what she was doing. I paused. My wife passed away trying to stop the defendant. She gave her life protecting our community. Dominic's attorney stood. You claim my client was responsible, but there's no evidence of that, is there? Rage flared. I gripped the witness box. My wife didn't fall. She was silenced because she was about to expose his operation. Objection. Speculation. Sustained. But I'd said it. The jury heard it. I stepped down. Dominic finally turned, looked directly at me. His eyes were empty. Cold. No remorse. Just calculation. The trial lasted 3 more days. Closing arguments. Jury deliberation. On the 4th day, the verdict. The jury filed in. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. On count 1, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, how do you find guilty? Count 2, money laundering, guilty. All 6 counts. Guilty. Dominic's face didn't change. The next morning, Judge Morrison delivered the sentence. Mr. Cruz, you exploited trust. You facilitated a criminal enterprise. You showed no remorse. She paused. I sentence you to 50 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. You are fined $500,000 and all assets are forfeited. 50 years. Dominic would be 90 when eligible for release. The bailiff led him away. He walked past me one last time. Still no emotion. Just that cold, empty stare. Outside on the courthouse steps, November wind cut through my jacket. Reporters shouted. I ignored them. Agent Hart found me. She shook my hand. Allison's sentencing is next week, she said. The plea deal went through. 4 years. I nodded. 4 years. When she got out, I'd be 72. Would it be too late to start over? You did the right thing, Hart said quietly, and Dorothy would be proud. I looked back at the courthouse. Justice had been served. The man who'd destroyed my family was going to prison for life. So why did I feel so empty? Dennis touched my shoulder. Let's go home. We drove back in silence. The fields were brown and bare. Winter coming, but the rose garden still held a few late blooms, yellow and pink against gray November sky. Dorothy's legacy, still alive, still beautiful, still reminding me why any of this mattered, still watching drop justice below. A quick note, the next chapter about Allison includes dramatized details. If you'd prefer to end the story here, that's okay. But if you're curious whether a father can forgive his daughter after everything, let's see what happens when Russell picks her up from prison 1 week later. Same courthouse, but quieter. The grand courtroom where Dominic had been sentenced was closed. Today we sat in a smaller room on the 2nd floor. Just Judge Morrison, the attorneys, a handful of court staff, and me. Dennis sat beside me. Agent Hart was in the back row. The benches were mostly empty. They brought Allison in through a side door. Orange jumpsuit. Hands cuffed. She'd been in Cumberland County Jail for nearly 2 weeks since testifying against Dominic. She looked thinner, paler. When her eyes found mine, they filled with tears. I looked away. The bailiff removed her cuffs. She sat at the defense table beside a public defender I'd never met. Judge Morrison reviewed the file. Ms. Hayes Cruz, you've entered a guilty plea to charges of forgery, fraud, and accessory to obstruction of justice. The prosecution has recommended a reduced sentence in exchange for your cooperation. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. Allison's voice was barely audible. The federal prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the defendant provided crucial testimony that led to the conviction of Dominic Cruz. She has no prior criminal record. We believe she was manipulated and coerced. The United States recommends 4 years imprisonment with credit for time served. Judge Morrison turned to Allison. Do you understand what that means? Yes, ma'am. You'll serve your sentence at a federal facility. With good behavior, you may be eligible for early release after approximately 40 months. Do you accept this plea agreement? Allison nodded. Shaw, yes, Your Honor. This court finds you guilty on all counts. You are hereby sentenced to 4 years in federal prison with credit for time served. You will be transferred to a federal facility within 30 days. Morrison's expression softened slightly. Ms. Hayes-Cruz, you made terrible choices. But you've also taken responsibility. Use this time to become the person your mother believed you could be. Allison broke down. Daddy, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I couldn't respond. My throat was too tight. The bailiff led her away. She looked back once, tears streaming down her face. Then the door closed. 4 years. My daughter would be 43 when she got out. I'd be 72. Would we have anything left to rebuild by then, 3 years and 4 months later? March. I stood in the parking lot of the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury, Connecticut, watching the gate. My hands were shaking. I gripped the steering wheel of Dennis's truck to steady them. I was 71 now. My hair had gone completely gray. My knees ached in cold weather. The farm kept me strong, but age was winning. The gate buzzed, opened. Allison walked out. She wore civilian clothes, jeans, a plain gray sweatshirt, worn sneakers. Her hair was cut short, practical. She'd aged more than 3 years. Lines around her eyes, a hardness in her posture that hadn't been there before. She saw the truck, stopped, uncertain. I opened the door, climbed out. We stood 15 feet apart in the cold March wind. Hi, Dad. Allison. She walked toward me slowly, like she was approaching a wild animal. When she was close enough, she stopped again. Thank you for coming. I didn't know if you would. Your mother would want me here. She flinched at that, but nodded. Yeah, she would. I gestured to the truck. Get in. It's cold. We drove in silence for the first hour. Allison stared out the window at the passing landscape, bare trees, patches of snow, highway signs. Finally, she spoke. How's the farm? Good. We're doing educational tours now. Owen and Morgan run most of the day-to-day operations. Dennis handles the business side. I read about it, in the articles. She paused. Mom would be proud. She'd be proud of a lot of things, not everything. Allison looked down at her hands. I know. Another mile of silence. Where am I staying? She asked quietly. I've arranged a room at a boarding house in Kennebunk, month to month. It's clean, safe. You'll need to find work. I'm not staying at the farm. I kept my eyes on the road. No. Oh. Her voice was small. I understand. Allison, you forged your mother's will. You tried to steal everything she left me. You were part of a conspiracy that used our land for criminal activity. I glanced at her. I'm here because you're my daughter. But trust that has to be earned back. Slowly. She wiped her eyes. I get it. I do. I'm grateful you came at all. We crossed into Maine as the sun was setting. The landscape shifted to familiar territory, rocky coast pine forests, small towns with white church steeples. Can I at least see the farm? Allison asked. Just once, I considered it, then nodded. Once. I turned off the main highway onto the back roads leading home. The farm appeared. As the last light faded the barn, Dennis had rebuilt the greenhouse, glowing with grow lights, the expanded rose garden stretching across the hillside. Allison's breath caught. It's beautiful. I parked near the main house. Come on. I led her past the barn, past the vegetable fields now dormant for winter to the memorial garden. It had grown. What had been 60 bushes was now more than 100 arranged in concentric circles. And at the center, a granite stone waist-high engraved with simple words. Dorothy O'Brien Hayes, Truth Seeker. Protector. Beloved wife. Allison stood frozen, staring at her mother's memorial. Then she fell to her knees in the dirt. "Mom," she whispered. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Her voice broke. "I didn't know. I should have known. I should have protected you. I should have seen what he was. I'm sorry I failed you. I'm sorry I hurt Dad. I'm sorry for everything." She sobbed into her hands, shoulders shaking. I stood back watching, feeling the weight of 3 years of prison letters of apologies, written and rewritten, of my daughter's long, slow journey toward understanding what she'd lost. This wasn't performance. This wasn't manipulation. This was real grief, real remorse. Maybe I thought there was hope after all. The March wind moved through the bare branches. Somewhere in the distance, Owen and Morgan's cottage glowed with warm light. The farm was alive, thriving exactly as Dorothy had dreamed. And my daughter was home. Not forgiven. Not yet. But home. June. 3 months since I'd driven Allison home from prison. Hayes Heritage Farm was alive with voices. Over 200 people wandered the grounds. Families with children, elderly couples, students from the local high school, reporters with cameras. The 3rd annual summer festival, and the biggest yet. I stood near the barn, 71 years old, and feeling every year of it, watching the controlled chaos with something close to wonder. Dennis managed the parking, directing cars into the south field, with the efficiency of a man who'd found his calling. Owen led a group through the greenhouse, explaining hydroponic systems and sustainable growing. Morgan demonstrated beekeeping at the new apiary, a dozen kids clustered around her in protective suits. The farm had become something I'd never imagined. Not just a working farm, a community, a symbol of resilience. Dorothy's dream fully realized. "Mr. Hayes." A young woman approached, notebook in hand. "I'm from the Portland Press-Herald. Can I ask you a few questions?" "Make it quick. I've got work to do." She smiled. "How does it feel to see the farm like this after everything you've been through?" I looked across the fields, the rose garden in full bloom, the education center, a new timber frame building we'd opened last month, where kids learned about crop rotation and soil health, the vegetable stand overflowing with produce. "It feels like Dorothy's still here," I said. "Like she's watching, and maybe smiling." The reporter scribbled notes. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes." She moved on. I walked toward the main gathering area where Dennis had set up picnic tables under white tents. That's when I saw her. Allison stood at the edge of the parking lot, half hidden behind her old Honda Civic. She wore a simple sundress, her short hair grown out a little. She was staring at the crowd, like she didn't know if she was allowed to join. I'd seen her twice since March. Once at the boarding house to drop off some of Dorothy's old books, once at a diner in town where we'd shared an awkward, silent lunch. She'd found work at a grocery store. She attended therapy twice a week. She'd sent me 3 letters, each one shorter and more uncertain than the last. But I hadn't invited her to the festival. She must have come on her own. I walked over. She saw me coming and straightened, nervous. "Dad, I'm sorry. I know I wasn't invited. I just wanted to see." She gestured at the farm. "I'll leave if you want." "You drove all the way from Kennebunk." I can go. I don't want to ruin. You're here, I sighed. Come on. Her eyes widened. Really? Don't make me change my mind. We walked through the festival together. Allison stayed close to my side, quiet, taking everything in. Kids ran past, chasing each other. A bluegrass band played near the barn. The smell of grilled corn and fresh bread filled the air. It's incredible, she whispered. Dad, it's everything Mom wanted. We got lucky. Good people. Hard work. Dorothy's trust fund gave us the foundation. We passed the education center. Through the windows, I could see displays about sustainable farming, photos of Dorothy working in her garden, a timeline of the farm's history. Allison stopped, stared at a photo of Dorothy Young, laughing, holding a basket of tomatoes. I miss her, Allison said. Every day, every single day. So do I. We kept walking, reached the rose garden, now expanded to over 100 bushes, all in peak bloom. Yellow, pink, white, red, an explosion of color and fragrance. Dorothy's granite memorial stood at the center, surrounded by flowers. Allison approached it slowly, knelt in the grass. Mom, she said quietly. I'm trying. I promise I'm trying to be better, to be someone you'd be proud of. She touched the stone. I'm sorry it took so long to understand. I'm sorry for everything. I stood back, giving her space. After a moment, she stood, turned to me. Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I want you to know I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. Your mother used to say everyone deserves a second chance. I met her eyes. Maybe she was right. Allison's face crumpled. Thank you. Thank you, Dad. Slow, Allison. We go slow. You can visit sometimes, but you have to keep working. Keep going to therapy. Keep proving you've changed. I will. I promise. Mr. Hayes. Owen jogged over, grinning. You gotta see this. Morgan's got something to show you. I followed him to the cottage. Morgan stood on the porch, holding a bundle wrapped in a soft yellow blanket. Russell, she said, smiling. Why, meet Dorothy Hayes Thompson. She pulled back the blanket. A baby girl, maybe 6 months old, with Morgan's dark eyes and Owen's button nose. The baby blinked up at me, curious. My chest went tight. You named her. After the bravest woman we ever met. Owen put his arm around Morgan. We hope that's okay. I reached out. Morgan placed the baby in my arms. So light, so warm. I looked down at that tiny face and felt Dorothy's presence like a hand on my shoulder. Hello, little one, I whispered. Your namesake would have loved you. The baby grabbed my finger, held on tight. Allison watched from a few feet away, tears running down her face. That evening, after the last guests had left, after Owen and Morgan had taken baby Dorothy home, after Dennis had locked up the barn, I walked alone through the rose garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. The flowers glowed in the fading light. Somewhere a bird sang its evening song. I stopped at Dorothy's memorial. You see this, M, I said to the stone, to the flowers, to the wind. We're living. We're loving. We're forgiving. Just like you wrote. The summer breeze carried the scent of roses, sweet and rich. Allison came today. She's trying, Dorothy, really trying. I don't know if I can fully forgive her. But I'm trying too. Shatita, I touched the granite warm from the sun. The farm is thriving. There's a baby named after you. Owen and Morgan are talking about building a house on the back 40. Dennis is happy. And me, I paused. I'm still here, still standing, because you taught me how. The wind picked up rustling through the bushes, and for just a moment I could have sworn I heard her voice. Live, Russell, just live. I smiled. I am, sweetheart. I am. I walked back to the farmhouse lights glowing in the windows, smoke curling from the chimney where Dennis was making dinner, the place Dorothy and I had built together. The place that had survived corruption and grief and loss. The place that was somehow still full of hope. October. I stood in front of the new sign freshly painted and mounted on 2 sturdy posts at the entrance to the property. Hayes Education and Heritage Center, grand opening, November 1st. The building behind it was simple but solid timber frame, large windows, a wraparound porch. Inside were classrooms, a demonstration kitchen, a library filled with books about sustainable agriculture and Maine history. Display cases held Dorothy's garden journal's photos of the farm through 3 generations' artifacts from the O'Brien family. It had taken the last of Dorothy's trust fund, every penny. But standing here looking at what we'd built, I knew she'd approve. Dennis walked up beside me, coffee mug in hand. Looks good. It does. Dorothy would be proud. I hope so. He clapped my shoulder. She is. Trust me. The grand opening drew a crowd over 100 people, including the mayor of Kennebunk, a state representative and reporters from 3 newspapers. Agent Hart came up from Boston. Owen and Morgan gave tours while baby Dorothy napped in a carrier on Morgan's chest. I gave a short speech, my voice rougher than I'd expected. My wife Dorothy believed this farm could be more than just a place to grow food. She believed it could be a place to grow people, to teach kids where their food comes from, to show them that hard work and care for the land matter. I paused, looking at the faces in the crowd. This center is her dream made real, and it's a promise that her courage, her sacrifice won't be forgotten. Applause echoed across the property. Hart caught my eye from the back of the crowd and nodded. Afterward, people wandered through the building, examining displays, asking questions. A teacher from the elementary school signed up 6 classes for spring tours. A homeschool co-op wanted to do weekly workshops. The farm was becoming something bigger than I'd ever imagined. 3 weeks later, Thanksgiving arrived cold and clear. We'd transformed the barn into a dining hall. Dennis and Owen had built long tables from reclaimed wood. Morgan and Allison, who'd been visiting more often, tentatively finding her place, had strung lights across the rafters. The space glowed warm and golden. I stood at the head of the table looking at the faces gathered there. Dennis, my brother-in-law and partner in keeping this place alive. Owen and Morgan, who'd brought youth and energy and hope. Baby Dorothy, now 8 months old, babbling happily in her high chair. Agent Hart, who'd driven up from Boston despite it being her only day off. And Allison sitting near the end, quiet but present. Before we eat, I said, I want to say something. Silverware stilled. Everyone looked at me. 5 years ago, I lost my wife. I thought I'd lost everything. This farm, this family, my future, all of it felt like it was slipping away. My voice steadied. But Dorothy left me more than a trust fund. She left me a mission. She taught me that protecting what's right matters, that second chances matter, and that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who fights alongside you. I looked around the table. So I'm grateful. For Dorothy, who showed me what courage looks like. For Dennis, who never left. For Owen and Morgan, who brought this place back to life. For Agent Hart, who made sure justice was served. And I met Allison's eyes. For second chances. For the hard work of forgiveness. Allison's eyes filled with tears. Let's eat, I said. The meal was simple turkey, stuffing roasted vegetables from our own fields, apple pie made from our orchard. But it tasted like home. After dinner, the women gathered in the kitchen. I watched through the doorway as Allison helped Morgan wash dishes, the two of them talking quietly, occasionally laughing. Baby Dorothy sat in a bouncer nearby, watching them with solemn eyes. I stepped outside for air. The November cold bit at my face. The first snowflakes of the season were starting to fall, tiny and perfect. Allison appeared beside me, drying her hands on a towel. Yeah, do you think you'll ever fully forgive me? I was quiet for a long moment, watching the snow. I don't know. Honestly, what you did, forging your mother's will, being part of what happened here, that's not something I can just forget. She nodded, looking down. But I'm trying, I continued. Every day I'm trying, because you're trying too. I see it. The therapy, the work, the way you show up even when it's hard. It is hard, she whispered. Being around the farm, seeing Mom's memorial, knowing what I did. Good, it should be hard. That's how you know you're growing. She looked up at me, snow catching in her hair. Thank you for letting me be here today, for including me. Your mother would have wanted it. And you, I met her eyes. I want it too. Slowly, but I want it. She hugged me, then quick and tight before pulling away and heading back inside. I stood in the snow a while longer. Agent Hart joined me, collar turned up against the cold. You've done something remarkable here, Russell, she said. Most people who go through what you went through, they break, or they run. You rebuilt. I had help. You had courage. Dorothy saw that in you. That's why she trusted you to finish what she started. Inside, I could hear laughter. Dennis telling some story, baby Dorothy squealing, the sound of family. You didn't just survive, Hart said. You're thriving. I watched the snow fall on the rose garden, the education center, the fields that had been in Dorothy's family for generations. Yeah, I said. I guess I am. Later, I stood at the window watching Allison's taillights disappear down the driveway. She'd waved goodbye, promising to visit again next week. The farmhouse was quiet now. Dennis had gone to bed. Owen and Morgan had taken baby Dorothy home to the cottage. I walked to Dorothy's memorial one last time, snow dusting the granite stone. We had a good day, Em, I said. Allison was here. She's getting better. We're getting better. The wind carried snow across the garden, gentle and soft. I miss you. Every damn day. But I'm doing what you asked. I'm living. I'm loving. I'm forgiving. I touched the cold stone. Thank you for believing I could. January. The blizzard hit at 3 a.m. By dawn, 2 feet of snow had buried the farm. Dennis and I stood in the driveway at 5 a.m., shovels in hand, breath steaming in the frigid air. We're too old for this, Dennis said, grinning despite the cold. I was 72. He was 63. My back ached. My knees protested every movement. But the greenhouse needed clearing, the livestock needed feeding, and the driveway needed plowing before Owen and Morgan could get through. Speak for yourself, I muttered, attacking the snow. By noon, we'd cleared enough for Owen to bring the tractor through. He shook his head as he climbed down. You two should have called me earlier. We're managing, I said. You're 72, Russell. You don't have to do everything yourself anymore. He was right. I knew he was right. But admitting it felt like surrendering. That night alone in the farmhouse, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Gray hair, deep lines around my eyes, hands that trembled slightly when I was tired. The face of an old man stared back. Dorothy had been 65 when she passed. I'd already outlived her by 7 years. How much time did I have left? And what would happen to the farm when I was gone? The next morning, I called Mitchell Goldstein. He arrived at the farm a week later, briefcase in hand, the same wire-rimmed glasses he'd worn when he'd shown me Dorothy's will. We sat at the kitchen table. Dennis joined us. "I need to update my will," I said. "Make sure the farm is protected." Goldstein opened his briefcase, pulled out documents. "What are you thinking?" "I want to establish a trust. The farm becomes a protected entity. Can't be sold, can't be mortgaged, can't be developed. It stays agricultural and educational. Forever. Who manages it?" I looked at Dennis. "Co-trustees, Dennis Owen Morgan." I paused. "And Allison." Dennis raised his eyebrows. "You sure about that? She's my daughter. She's changed. And Dorothy would want her included." Goldstein made notes. "Any conditions for Allison?" "She maintains the trust only if she stays clean. No criminal activity. If she violates that, her trusteeship passes to someone else. Agent Hart, maybe. I can draft that." We spent 2 hours going through details. The education center would continue operating. The rose garden would be maintained in perpetuity. A small fund would pay for basic upkeep. Any profits would go back into educational programming. "You're essentially creating a legacy foundation," Goldstein said, "like a living memorial to your wife." "That's exactly what it is." Before he left, Goldstein shook my hand. "Dorothy would be proud of this, Russell." "I hope so." February dragged, cold, dark, exhausting. But March brought the first hints of warmth. Snow melted. Mud appeared. And one morning I saw green shoots pushing through the soil in the rose garden. Spring. Again, always. I called everyone to the farm on a Saturday in mid-March. Dennis Owen Morgan with baby Dorothy strapped to her chest, and Allison, who drove up from Kennebunk, where she'd finally moved into her own small apartment. We gathered at the rose garden. I'd ordered 20 new bushes bare root ready for planting. "We're adding to the memorial," I said. "Each of these roses represents someone who helped us, who fought for what was right." I handed out name tags we'd attached to stakes beside each bush. Dorothy O'Brien Hayes, the center, always. Allison planted the first new bush near her mother's stone hands, gentle in the soil. Agent Veronica Hart, for courage. Dennis placed that one with military precision. Agent Spencer Cole, for justice. Owen dug the hole, Morgan settled the roots. Mitchell Goldstein, for protecting Dorothy's legacy. Mrs. Kathleen O'Brien, for welcoming me home to Ireland. Victoria Cruz, for her testimony and her grace. We worked our way through the list. Roses for people who'd helped. Roses for FBI agents I'd never met, but who'd worked the case. A rose for the prosecutor. A rose for Judge Morrison. And at the end, 3 more. But these, I said quietly, are for the people who didn't make it, who got caught in Kozlov's operation and paid the price. We planted them in silence. 3 lives stolen by greed and violence. 3 families forever changed. When we finished, 20 new bushes stood in fresh soil, barely more than sticks right now. But by summer, they'd bloom. Allison, I said, come here. She approached, uncertain. These roses are your responsibility now. You'll care for them, water them, prune them, protect them. I met her eyes. And someday when you have kids of your own, you'll tell them about your mother, about what she did, about why these roses matter. Allison's voice shook. I promise, Dad. I'll take care of them forever. I'll make sure everyone knows what Grandma Dorothy did. Good. We stood together in the garden, 5 adults and 1 baby, surrounded by more than 100 rose bushes, just beginning to wake from winter. A family, broken and mended, scarred, but healing. That evening, after everyone had left, I walked through the garden one last time. "We did it, Em," I said to the stone, to the earth, to the memory that lived in every bloom. The farm's protected, the education center's thriving, our daughter's finding her way back. I touched the cold granite. And me, I'm still here. Older. Tired. But still here. The March wind carried the scent of thawing earth and distant pine. Somewhere a robin sang the first I'd heard since autumn. Spring, renewal, hope. "When I don't know how much time I have left," I said. "But whatever it is, I'll spend it well, like you taught me." The sun set behind the barn, painting the sky orange and gold. Baby Dorothy's laughter drifted from the cottage where Owen and Morgan were putting her to bed. Dennis's light glowed in the guest room window. The farm was alive, thriving, safe, Dorothy's legacy growing stronger every day. I walked back to the house joints, aching but heartful, ready for whatever came next. November, 4 years since the night I'd received the lockbox. I stood on the farmhouse porch watching cars stream down the driveway. Over 300 people, the biggest gathering Hayes Heritage Farm had ever seen. The Dorothy Hayes Memorial Festival had become an annual tradition, but this year felt different. Bigger, more important. Banners hung across the barn. Truth. Courage, Buckrooks. Legacy. Dennis directed parking with the efficiency of a general. Owen and Morgan managed the crowd flow, and Allison, my daughter, stood at the education center entrance wearing a staff badge, greeting visitors with a genuine smile. She'd been working part-time as education coordinator for 8 months now, watching her lead school groups explaining sustainable farming, telling them about her mother's courage. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. A black sedan pulled up. Official plates. A woman in a navy suit stepped out, the governor's chief of staff. She handed me a framed certificate. From Governor Mills, in recognition of Hayes Heritage Farm's contributions to agricultural education and community healing. I accepted it throat tight. "Thank you." Another car arrived. I recognized the passengers immediately. Victoria Cruz stepped out, followed by 2 teenagers, Ethan, now 13, and Sophie, 10. Dominic's real family. The people he'd lied to, just like he'd lied to us. Victoria and I had exchanged a few letters over the years. Cautious at first, then warmer. We were both victims of the same man, both trying to rebuild. "Russell," she shook my hand. "Thank you for inviting us. You're part of this story too." Ethan and Sophie wandered toward the rose garden, curious. Allison saw them and walked over, introducing herself. The 4 of them, Dominic's broken family, stood together at Dorothy's memorial. Healing looked different for everyone. By afternoon, the festival was in full swing. Food trucks, live music, tours of the greenhouse and education center. Kids running through the fields. Agent Hart arrived with Agent Cole, both off-duty but still somehow official-looking. "You've built something remarkable," Hart said, surveying the crowd. "We built it. All of us." Dennis appeared at my elbow, grinning. "Russell, there's someone I want you to meet." He led me to a woman standing near the rose garden. Late 60s, silver hair, warm eyes, holding a cup of cider. "This is Margaret. She volunteers at the library in town. Margaret, this is Russell Hayes." "I've heard so much about this place," she said, shaking my hand. "And about you." We talked. She'd lost her husband 3 years ago to cancer. She loved gardening. She'd read the articles about the farm, about Dorothy. Your wife sounds like she was extraordinary, Margaret said. She was. You must miss her terribly. Every day, but I'm learning that grief and joy can exist in the same space. Margaret smiled. That's very wise. Later, as the sun set, I stood on a small platform near the barn. The crowd gathered. Someone handed me a microphone. I looked at the faces. Owen and Morgan with baby Dorothy, now a toddler. Dennis beside Margaret. Allison holding hands with Sophie Cruz. Hart and Cole. Victoria. Kathleen O'Brien, who'd flown over from Ireland. Mrs. Linda from the Café. Mitchell Goldstein. Teachers, students, neighbors, strangers who'd heard the story. 4 years ago. I said, my voice amplified across the field. I thought my life was over. My wife had passed away. I believed I'd lost everything. The crowd was silent. But Dorothy left me something more than a trust fund or evidence. She left me a mission. She showed me that protecting what's right matters more than protecting what's comfortable. That second chances aren't just possible, they're necessary. That family is whoever shows up, whoever stays, whoever fights beside you when things get hard. I looked at Allison. She was crying. This farm isn't just about vegetables and roses. It's about resilience. It's about taking something broken and making it beautiful again. It's about honoring the people who came before us by living lives worthy of their sacrifice. I raised my glass of cider. To Dorothy, to courage, to truth, and to all of you for proving that love is stronger than grief and hope is stronger than despair. To Dorothy, the crowd echoed. We drank. The music started again. People danced. 10 o'clock. The festival wound down. Cars departed. Owen and Morgan carried a sleeping Dorothy back to their cottage. Dennis walked Margaret to her car, the two of them talking softly. Allison hugged me goodnight. Love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetheart. I walked alone through the rose garden under a sky full of stars. More than 100 bushes surrounded Dorothy's memorial, dormant now, but waiting for spring. I knelt at the granite stone, touched the cold surface. Dorothy, if you can see us now, we're living, we're loving, we're thriving. My voice broke. Thank you for everything. Thank you for believing I could do this. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like. The November wind moved through the bare branches, carrying the faint scent of earth and memory. I'll keep going, Em, for as long as I can. I'll make sure your story never gets forgotten. I'll make sure this place keeps growing, I promise. I stood, looked back at the farmhouse, lights glowing in every window, laughter drifting from inside where Dennis and Allison were cleaning up, the barn standing solid and strong, the education center dark now but ready for Monday's classes, Hayes Heritage Farm, Dorothy's dream, our legacy. I walked toward the house, toward warmth, toward family, toward whatever years I had left. The door opened. Golden light spilled onto the porch. Dennis called Russell Coffees on. I climbed the steps, stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and for the first time in 4 years, I felt complete. Not healed, not unmarked, but whole, living, loving, thriving, just like Dorothy had asked. Looking back, I see how easily family betrayal creeps in through small lies, blind trust, comfortable ignorance. My daughter wasn't evil. She was manipulated by a man who knew exactly how to exploit love. That's the danger of family betrayal. It hides behind familiar faces. If my grandpa's stories teach you anything, let it be this: pay attention. Dorothy saw the signs: midnight trucks, Dominic's pressure strangers near our well. She acted. She didn't wait for proof. Don't be like me, trusting blindly until it's too late. Family betrayal cuts deepest because we drop our guard with those we love. But God gave us instincts for a reason. When something feels wrong, investigate. When someone pressures you to ignore your conscience, stop. Protect what matters even when it's hard. These grandpa stories aren't just about loss, they're about resilience, about building beauty from broken pieces, about forgiveness that doesn't forget, but chooses to move forward. Dorothy showed me that courage isn't fearlessness. It's acting despite fear. So here's my advice from an old farmer who shares grandpa stories like these. Trust God, trust your gut, and never assume family betrayal can't touch you. Watch for red flags. Fight for truth. And if you fall, get back up. Because as long as you're breathing, there's time to make things right. The farm still stands. The roses still bloom. Dorothy's legacy lives on. I appreciate you staying with me through this entire journey. Drop a comment below if you were Russell. Would you have forgiven Allison? I'm genuinely curious about your take. If this story moved, you hit subscribe so you catch my next one. Quick disclaimer. This narrative draws from real themes around trust and family conflict, but some details have been dramatized for storytelling impact. If it's not your vibe, no worries. Check out my other videos instead.